This is the Roundtable Talk podcast, brought to you in part by Rayford Guns, the Hoke County edition of the North State Journal, the Libra Initiative of North Carolina, and our flagship station, WCLN Christian 105.7. And now here are your hosts, Ruben Castellon and Chris Holland.
All right. Welcome to episode 150. I'm Ruben Castellon.
And Chris Holland.
All right, let's get right to it. What's the first thing on the agenda? What you want to talk about?
I think we want to talk about elections first off. So everybody realizes that early voting started this morning at
I'm sorry, can you say that again?
Early voting started this morning at 8 a.m. It runs through February 23rd, which is a Saturday at 3 p.m. Here in Hoke County, our polls are open 8 a.m. to 7:30 p.m. on weekdays, 8 a.m. to 3 p.m. on Saturdays, and there is no Sunday voting, so there won't be any polls open on Sundays. Our two early voting sites are the Pratt Building downtown and the Rockfish Community Center. Right now we have 14 candidates that are on the Republican ballot for Hoke County. A lot of people didn't see commissioners listed, so their question is, where's all the Republicans in Hoke County? Well, what they have to realize is this is a primary. There weren't enough commissioners that filed for the race to have a runoff.
On the Republican
side. On the Republican side. So right now, the only commissioners you will see is if you draw a Democrat ballot, you will have 5 county commissioner candidates up for election. Those that come out of the primary, the top 3, will then move on to the November general election, where they'll face off with Stephanie Carter and David Frump, the 2 Republican candidates. So that's it, the 14. So there are candidates on the Republican ballot. They range from the U.S. Senate. There's 5 candidates up there. One of them there was 6. One of them was disqualified last week because, come to find out, she lives in Florida, renting a mailbox.
I heard about that.
Renting a mailbox in Charlotte.
That's crazy.
Yes, I need to be closer. And then filed to run for U.S. Senate for the state of North Carolina. So they figured out that she's still registered in Florida, last voted in April 25 in Florida, or whatever their municipal election time was last year. So the Board of Elections, being primarily Republican, majority Republican, said, no, you're disqualified. I'm curious to see, because, prior to last year, the Board of Elections has been Democrat, ever since Pat McCrory got out of office. So I'm kind of curious what the results would have been. Because, I
have a good idea what would have been.
Well, we do.
She would have ran.
Based on past performance.
She would have ran.
Yeah, because Robert Kennedy, remember when he dropped out of the presidential primary, and he asked to be removed here in the state of North Carolina, and there was still ample time to do that, but the board said, nope, we're going to leave him on the ballot. Yeah. It's just, I don't know.
No good intent.
Democrats. I heard to paraphrase Tim Burchett. He made a comment yesterday or last night or this morning, but he said, I don't know why Democrats are so opposed to voter ID. They've been showing death certificates to vote for years. That guy's a part of the administration. So that kind of gives you an idea of the flavor of how the Republicans are right now. We're like, look, there's no reason why you can't have a voter ID to register and or vote.
Well, I mean, you have an ID. You are required to present an ID for almost everything. You want to buy a gun, you need your credentials. You want to buy alcohol beverages, you need your credentials. You want to board a flight, you need credentials. You want to go and see a NFL football. I've been to a long time ago, but you need proper identification. You need proper identification for almost everything, and yet, they refuse to enforce or to get on board as far as IDs for voting. And then, if you remember, not too long ago, the biggest thing is it's racist. Is everything the Democratic Party does not like is racist. Everything is racist. Okay, but they can't justify, when they say that, they can't justify what it is when you're required to have an ID card to board a plane. Okay? they don't say that that's racist because they know that it's all against, because if you don't require to have IDs to vote, then it opens the door for fraud. And that's a fact.
Yeah, and there's no widespread fraud. It doesn't matter if there's one or a million. One person disenfranchises a legal voter, whether it's one person or a million.
And you know what? I'm glad you just say that one voter. And it's even more crucial in the local elections, because one vote can make the difference.
Yep, for sure.
Obviously, nationally, the president or a senator, it's got to take more than just one vote. But, it just, to me, I just don't understand. Talking about the voter ID, I know you were going to probably mention that, but the Save, what was it? The Save
Act. Save Act.
I think Donald Trump changed the name, or that's what I heard. The Save Act. It passed at the House of Representatives just yesterday, if I'm not mistaken, and only this is what I don't understand. Only one Democrat
voted for it.
Voted for it. And that tells me a lot. That tells me that in that group, there was only one honest Democrat. Everybody else wants to cheat, because they know there's no other rational reasoning as to why you are not on board to make sure that we got safe voter. Right now, Americans do not trust the system.
Yeah, and so the full title of the bill is the Safeguard American Voter Eligibility. So it's SAVE Act. It has passed the House of Representatives and has moved to the Senate for consideration. This bill, and talking about people that support it or don't support it, by and large, the American people support this act. Various polls, for example, the Pew Research poll shows that 83% of Americans support requiring proof of citizenship to register and vote, 95% of Republicans, 71% of Democrats. A Gallup poll, and so I was we'll get to that, but a Gallup poll shows that 98% of Republicans and 84% of unaffiliated voters support voter IDs. I was kind of curious why one of them was Democrat, Republican, one was Republican independent, and so I started looking into these polls. I'm like, well, do some lean to the left, do some lean to the right? Because why would you exclude the Democrat Party in your polling? Why are you only polling Republicans and independents, unless you didn't want that narrative to get out that, 71% of Democrats are actually in favor of voter ID. But according to my research, it says that both of these polls are rated as center or unbiased in their polling.
Which is good.
Which is good. You have some confidence that they're going down the center. They're polling, according to nationally recognized, nationally accepted standards. But, overwhelmingly, the American people, support this act. And ironically enough, Senator Orhoff, I think his name Osloff, Orhoff or something, he was the black Republican, black Democrat senator elected in 2020 or 2021 as a special runoff. And so just come to find out, he requires ID to attend his campaign events.
How about that?
So if you want to go see him in a town hall, you have to show an ID to go in and listen to him talk about no need for IDs, right? It's just ironic. The guy, how can you consciously or in good conscience say, yeah, you don't need an ID to vote, that's racist, that's, discriminatory or biased or whatever, but yet if you want to come see me, show me an ID so I know who you are.
That's right.
So I know that you're not a rabble-rouser, you're not a Republican in disguise or whatever, stuff like that. It's just, the American people want it. So it should be a bipartisan, agreement. Everybody should jump on it. Now they're talking about the Senate might stall it and not pass anything. There's two, what they call the, what is it whenever they don't vote? Anyway, 60 vote threshold, right? The filibuster, right? So what the Congress has been going through for the last decade is what they call a zombie filibuster.
Yep.
Whereas they just go out and they poll their party, And if they don't have enough votes, it's kind of like a backdoor vote. Mm-hmm. If they don't have enough votes, they just don't bring it forward. Well, what they have also, what is in the rules of the Senate, is a talking filibuster, meaning that if you want to vote against this and you don't want it to pass, you have to get up and explain your reasoning, right? Mm-hmm. And Hakeem Jeffries, he did a filibuster a couple months back. He sat out there for 20 hours or whatever it was, talking about whatever it was, whatever nonsense he's always spewing. But with that kind of filibuster, it only requires a simple majority of 50 votes. So there's a lot of pressure on Thune, the Senate Majority Leader, to bring forward the talking filibuster. Hey, Democrats, if you're opposed to this bill, get up here and tell us why.
And I'll tell you what, and here lies multiple problems, okay? You have, and there's a lot of people right now on both sides of the aisles, and those are in the middle, the unaffiliated. There's a lot of people out there that realize now that a lot of the senators and congressmen, they're not there for the American people. They have their own hidden agenda. Because a prime example, you have, I heard it this morning that not all Republicans, just despite Donald Trump, the President Donald Trump, will vote for the act, the SAVE Act, and that's Paul Ryan is one, and that's because he got checked by Donald Trump. There's like two more, so
you're talking about Rand Paul. Paul Ryan's out of he's like Rand Paul, and there's two other ones that they got into arguments with President Trump, and Massey's one, and he checked them, and so out of spite they will vote against it, but right now they have that, and this is what I find so suspicious, is that they have the numbers right now to kill the filibuster. They have the numbers. They don't need 60 majority because they have the majority on the Senate. They can get rid of the filibuster. So that tells you a lot about all these Republicans too. Why would you not? Right now we have an opportunity, and we might not have another opportunity to pass everything to make America better for all for citizens. I'm gonna tell you. Of course, I'm first generation American, but I don't care too much about those illegals that come in here illegally. They jump the line. They're cheaters. They jump the line. Well, we'll talk about that, but I want to talk. I'll push back on the filibuster. I think it's good. Harry Reid, back in the early 2000s, abolished the filibuster for federal judges, excluding Supreme Court. There's still a filibuster for Supreme Court nominees. Yeah. So, and he thought, we're going to do all this. I think it was during Obama or whoever. I think it was President
Bush,
Obama.
Second Bush.
No, it was during Obama's presidency. But anyway, so the Democrats pushed forward all these federal judges, right? Because we need the 50 simple majority. Mm-hmm. Well, then Mitch McConnell, he came back with that same authority and started pushing through all the federal judges during Trump's first presidency, and there was a whole bunch of pushback, So I like the filibuster. It's a restraint, because just short-term gain, to do something that drastic for a short-term gain won't benefit you in the long run, because eventually power will shift. They will then have to be
absolutely.
Now, can you trust the Democrats when they get back in power in the Senate to have that same moral standard that,
of course not.
They didn't do it to us, we're not going to do it to them. No, I agree. Not. Unfortunately, I think as soon as the Democrats come back in charge.
And today, I was listening to this. I don't know if he was a pastor or bishop. I don't even know if he was religious or not. And he was pushing back on all Christians that are Democrats. He said, if you are a Democrat, you cannot call yourself to be a Christian. Because for you to be a Democrat, you are against a lot of godly things, moral things. Because, of course, you don't have to be biblically sound or to be a Christian to have a moral compass.
Be a moral
you
person.
just got to know what's right and wrong, because that's what it is. To be moral is to know what's right and wrong, and you choose to do the right thing.
Right.
So he said it. He said it's so clear, it's so simple that if you are a Christian, you cannot be a Democrat, because to be a Democrat, it stands for everything that is just evil.
Yeah.
Abortion on demand is one of the biggest ones right there.
Right.
You know, and open borders. Even Democrats try to push against conservatives. Well, if you're a Christian, you know, how can you not help your neighbors? Even the Bible and many books of the Bible specifically says that we have to pray for our nation. We have borders. We have walls.
Right.
You know, so it's just right now we have a party, and I'm referring to the Democratic Party, where they used to be conservative. I know that because I was young when I voted the first time, 18. I remember Bill Clinton signed into law that marriage was between a man and a woman. Today, that will never happen. Today, for you to hear a Democrat to say that marriage is between a man and a woman, you will not hear words coming out of a Democratic mouth like that. It just won't. Yeah. It won't happen. So, you know, they lost their way, unfortunately, and I think that they're all fighting to get the demise of America. That's the way I look at it.
A lot of them are, and so talking about, you know, the moral code and Christianity, I listened to a pastor last night, and he was talking about, you know, one of the arguments that liberals will throw up at conservatives is, hey, you're talking about you're pro-life, but you're pro-death penalty. He says, you know, and I truly believe this in the field that I work in, that words and language matter.
Absolutely.
You can frame something way out of context just by the simple use of a different word. Whereas he's talking about the Ten Commandments. It says what we know and what we're taught currently in modern time is thou shalt not kill. But if you go back,
and that's not correct.
That's not correct.
That's not
if
correct.
you go back to the actual
thou shalt
Hebrew,
not murder.
You shall not murder.
Murder and kill is
right?
not the same thing.
You might have read the same thing or heard the same thing, but yeah. So it's, you know, protect children, protect the innocent. That's one of the commandments. Do not murder, and that's an individual. You know, you as an individual do not murder. However, when you're talking about the state, there's passages in the Bible where it commands the state to wield the sword.
That's right.
Right? So the wielding of the sword is the implementation of justice.
That's right.
Right? And so you as an individual are commanded, do not murder. Yeah. When the state's doing it, is it murder? Because it's legal.
Well,
right?
It's not murder. It's the law. It's killing, because a prime example, and I'm glad you're saying that, because Mr. A murders Mr. B. It's not the same as killing. Okay, give you an example. Mr. A murders Mr. B while robbing Mr. B. So he shoots him. He murders him. Okay? That is murder. The state convicts him for capital murder. Okay? The state kills him because he murdered somebody. Okay, now if it's a self-defense issue, that's a different story. But, you know, murder and killing is entirely two different. But
right.
This is the issue. When Christians are also, people so-called Christians, when they're not informed, they don't know how to push back between the difference, as an example, between murder and killing, because it's totally two different. Abortion is murder.
It is.
You don't kill the baby daddy.
Right. Right. Yeah.
But you're willing to murder the child, the innocent child that had nothing to do because of the baby daddy
being conceived. Yeah. Or the baby mama. Whichever,
yeah.
You know? All right. So we're talking about the SAVE Act, voter ID. What I want to bring up is there's a lifelong Democrat in North Carolina by the name of Kate Barr, who is challenging Tim Moore in the U.S. House District 14. She's admitted that she's a Democrat and that she's a fake Republican. Quote, I'm not a real Republican. I'm running as a progressive in a Republican primary. So what she's saying is, because of the gerrymandering, that's one of her biggest issues, is that red districts will stay red blue districts will stay blue, and the only way to take power from the corrupt individuals is, paraphrasing what she was talking about in her interview, is to run in that party so that you can wrestle the power away from them. Which brings me to a point. Vet your candidates, right? Because this isn't just North Carolina. This is happening across the state.
That's right.
That people are changing their parties to run as a Republican because...
But they're not Republicans.
Like it or not, Republicans is kind of the flavor of the month,
Right now.
Right now. So people are trying to tag on to the popularity of Trump. The polls might tell you otherwise, depending on who you listen to. But a lot of the policies are very popular in Republican circles. And so people are trying to take advantage of that and use that to their leverage to get into office. But anyway, so vet your ballot choices, and more importantly, get off the couch and go vote, right? Because there are people out there that are trying to steal your vote. They are trying to influence you to vote for them, and they don't have the same values. They don't have the same policy goals. They don't have the same ideas of America, society, Hoke County, North Carolina, or whatever. So they're out there. Vet your candidates, and I sent out an email to our contacts, about 700 people, last night that showed everybody that's on our ballot with a Facebook link to them. So go there and check them out. See what they post. Look back 3 years and see what they post, right?
Or
so look at what their pictures are and what kind of, atmosphere they're congregating in all the time. Know your candidate. And more importantly, get out, exercise your responsibility as an American and go vote.
I'm going to tell you this right now. You brought up a good point. Anybody that tells me it's a Democrat, I believe that they're Democrats. Anybody that tells me that you're a Republican, I question it. Because your actions speak louder. These rhinos up at the Senate, at the federal level, they should be ashamed of calling themselves Republicans because they have also lost their way, and it's really shameful that something. I've always said it. Something happens when they win the second reelection.
Yeah. They kind of they have the name recognition.
Yeah.
They have the donor base. They have the grassroots support.
Yeah.
So, that's one of those things, getting your foot in the door is the hard part. Being a challenger,
hard.
Is very, very hard. But once you get in the door, just like you said, it's kind of like they spend more focus and energy on that next election than doing what they were sent up there to do.
Yeah.
And I'll call them all out. Our representatives around here are kind of the same way. You never see them until it's time to go vote.
And that's shameful, to be honest with you. It's very shameful. I'm not going to mention the individual's name, but I'll tell you what. It's shameful. It is shameful that you come to a meeting maybe once when you're running, but we never see you again for the next 2 years. And it is shameful. Yeah. It really is. It says a lot that you take us for granted.
Yeah. And that is, and like it or not, we are a blue county. And we are outnumbered by Democrats.
Well, and the fact of the matter that 4,500 Republicans are not going to vote.
Are not going to come vote too.
That just complicates even things.
It does. But and not to say that our representatives don't care. There are our state senator, our congressman, our state, our U.S. senators. I mean, they're doing things for North Carolina. They're doing some things for Hoke County. However, your vote is you have to work hard for this vote in here, and because we're so outnumbered, because it's such an uphill climb, I think that the concentration is on those big pockets of Republicans where they can really get in the votes, which is kind of sad. But I get people calling me all the time. They're like, "Hey, what about so and so? I haven't seen him. I heard him. Here's his email. Send him an email. Let him know." And hopefully, and that's what's going to drive it eventually, is when enough people say, "Hey, I haven't seen you. Come down here and tell me what you got going on. Tell me what you're doing for me in North Carolina House, or tell me what you're doing for me in the federal Congress, the U.S. Congress." So that's just the way it goes. What else you got?
I wanted to address a little the one situation that happened in Canada. Just what was it yesterday? The school shooting. Of course,
last night?
Of course, you know who did it because the news media won't say who it was. They'll just say it was a shooter person.
Yeah,
and I knew right there.
Gun person or something.
A gun person, a shooter person, gun person. I'm like, what? And so, it wasn't but a few hours later when the individual was properly identified. It was a trans person.
Right.
They should have just said it's a trans person. Later on we can figure out what it was. And finally, the chief in that area finally said that it was a biological male transitioning to a female. And
wearing a dress.
In Canada, it's against the law to address somebody by their biological status. It's got to be how they identify
their dead name.
Yeah, so the chief started after he said what he said. He started talking on this male as a female.
Yeah, and I've seen that too, and I question it. It's John Doe is always referenced in the reports as Jane Doe. No, the dude's name was John.
That's right.
The guy's name was John.
That's right.
And you're just lending credibility to the delusion. You're supporting the mental illness, the unaddressed mental illness that these individuals have. And that's something that we always talk about is, they're so quick to identify a white guy.
Yeah.
And to a lesser extent, a black guy.
Unless it's a trans. Unless it's a trans.
There you go. and that's what I was going to say is, unless it's somebody that's trans, somebody that's bi, or whatever their issues are, part of what you used to call the LGBTQ mafia.
Mafia, that's exactly what it is.
If they're a member of that organization, then they always obscure it, and they also promote it and continue the falsity when they keep using their made up names.
It's shameful because right now, we have the Supreme Court just heard hearing last month, I think, or a month and a half ago, on whether biological males that identify as females will be allowed to compete in biological females in the sports. And I'm really hoping they do the right thing, but because if we lose this one,
yeah,
and Title IX is out.
Even state law.
Yeah.
North Carolina has a state law barring men and women's sports.
Yeah, so
I'm just kind of surprised. I grew up in the 70s. You grew up
in the 70s. Yeah,
and our parents, my mother and my aunts, they were what would be traditional feminists. I have a right to a job. I have a right to you respecting me for my abilities, whatever, that type of stuff, which I'm all on board with that, right? Oh. Where are these women today when these men are winning women's titles? They're denying women, in college scholarship opportunities or in high school scholarship opportunities because they're competing and beating them out in these sports. Where are the women?
You know where they're at? Supporting these mentally perverted men. That's where they at. That's where they at.
Well, not all of them. Not all of them. There are a lot of women.
But there's enough because their vote is making a difference.
Their votes are making a
difference. And not for the best.
All right. So as we see, America 250, we're slowly marching towards July 4th. 2026, which is the 250th celebration of America. So this month in Revolutionary War history, February 6th, John Adams published the Rule of Law and Rule of Men in Massachusetts. February 20th, Second Massachusetts Provincial Congress met. Right after that, the King of England declared that Massachusetts was in rebellion and that they were going to send troops to put it down. And then in February 27th, Lord North's consolatory resolution, he came before the Parliament and said, hey, look, we need to not tax these people so much. That's kind of like their whole issue.
Yep.
We need to keep the empire together, kind of let's figure something out. And that was approved so William Pitt's plan was let's, work together. but Parliament approved Lord North's resolution, which had been approved by the King. In the resolution, Parliament agreed to end all forms of taxation related to defense, colonial government, and judicial system. This is the big important part. The resolution was addressed to each colony, not the Continental Congress. We had already established the Continental Congress, and it was already recognized as the American government by that time. And then Parliament refused to acknowledge Congress, even though the colonies had accepted it. Next Thursday is the last Hoke County GOP meeting during early voting. I'm sure all of the judge candidates will be there. I've invited the 2 Senate candidates, 2. Michael Watley's here last week. But so come on out, and at the beginning of the week when I put out the notice, I'll let you know what candidates are actually going to be in attendance. But come out, your last chance to hear from the candidates that are on the ballot. And look, you have 14 days to go vote. There's no reason.
Please pick one day and go and vote.
Go vote. And
especially if you're a Republican.
And your last chance is on March 3rd.
That's right.
All right. That's all I got.
All right. See you next time.
Have a great weekend.
Getting to the facts across the state, around the world, and at home in Rayford, North Carolina. The Roundtable Talk Podcast. Brought to you in part by Rayford Guns, the Hoke County edition of the North State Journal, the Libre Initiative of North Carolina, and our flagship station, WCLN Christian 105.7. Be sure to like, share, and leave a review wherever you listen to podcasts.